another video I told you I'm going to make on was gross domestic product or GDP. Now we will definitely go through a detailed explanation of GDP in my future videos. For now, I'd just like to give you a short intro or a short explanation, as short as possible, to explain gross domestic product or GDP. Okay. Now, first of all, what is gross domestic product? GDP is actually the broadest quantitative measure of a nation's total economic activity. Specifically speaking, GDP represents the monetary value of all goods and services produced within a nation's geographic borders over a specified period of time. Now, we need to understand how GDP works. Okay. In the US, the Department of Commerce, and in India, the Ministry of Finance, principally, and industries also, release GDP data for US, for the United States, and for India, respectively. In the US, it's released on a quarterly basis. In India, it's released, I think, every year. It's also on a quarterly basis, sometimes on a biannual basis. The equation used to calculate GDP is GDP, gross domestic product, is equal to consumption plus total consumption plus government expenditures plus investments plus exports minus imports. Okay, so consumption, government expenditures or government spending, investments, exports, all summed up together, and just striking off the total imports that have happened. The components that are used to calculate GDP include, in case of consumption, they include durable goods. We said consumption, government expenditures, investments, and exports. Now, we'll first come with the components used to calculate GDP. Okay, in terms of consumption first. Consumption here would include durable goods, that is, items expected to last more than 3 years. Okay, non-durable goods, that is, food and clothing, and services. In case of government expenditures, we principally take into account defense, roads, schools, nowadays health services, and the like. There are more. In case of government investments or investment spending, the components of investment spending would be non-residential, that is, spending on plants and equipment, that's industrial plants and equipment, that is non-residential. And then we have residential, like single family and multi-family homes. And apart from that, we have business inventories also, okay, included in the government investment spending. In case of exports, we talk about net exports. Exports are added to GDP and imports are deducted from it, from that. Okay, so total minus imports, or rather exports minus imports, give us the net exports. It could be a negative value, it could be a positive value. The GDP report also includes information regarding inflation in terms of, the implicit price deflator measures, the changes in prices and spending patterns, and also the fixed weight price deflator measures and price changes for a fixed basket of over 5,000 goods and services. Okay, this is just the principal part of the GDP report, basic principle part of it. GDP is calculated both in current dollars or rupees and in constant dollars or rupees. Current dollar GDP involves calculating economic activity in present day dollars. But this, however, makes time period comparisons difficult due to the effects of inflation. But if you compare that to constant dollar GDP factors, uh, by comparison, constant dollar GDP factors, GDP actually factors out the impact of inflation and allows for easy comparisons by converting the dollar or rupee value, the currency value, in other time periods to present day dollars. So I can always, kind of uh, bring on with inflationary factors what the dollar value was in 1972 as at today's date. Okay, and then calculate and compare. Why does GDP matter? In short, when GDP declines for two consecutive quarters or more in a year, by definition, the economy is in a recession. Meanwhile, when GDP grows too quickly and fears of inflation come into being, the Federal Reserve in the United States and the Ministry of Finance and or the Reserve Bank of India often attempt to stimulate the economy by raising interest rates. Okay, so that is it principally about GDP in a nutshell. Okay, see you for the next part that we are supposed to go in for in uh, in our course, that is point 1.4, how to organize economies and an overview of economic systems. So till then, take care.